Okay, let's quickly move on to our next issue, where we will be discussing as the nation awaits the new minimum wage promised to be sent to the National Assembly by President Bola Tinubu. The burden of implementing the minimum wage may make many states bankrupt. In a document titled Analysis of State FAAC Inflows and State Expenditure Profile of Nigeria Governors Forum Secretariat, the NGF report warned that implementing the new minimum wage could push states into bankruptcy due to increased recurrent expenditure. And according to the report, the burden of recurrent expenditure already left Abia, Ekiti, Gombe, Imo, Katsina, Kogi, Oyo, Plateau, Sokoto, Yobe, and Zamfara in deficit in 2022. And the report predicted that if the recurrent expenditure increased by 50%, 13 states would fall into deficit, with only 10 remaining financially stable. And the tripartite committee's recommendation of 62,000 naira minimum wage could necessitate over 100% increase from the current 30,000 naira, potentially leaving only a few states like Anambra, Bayelsa, Borno, Ebonyi, Gombe, Imo, Jigawa, Kaduna, Lagos, and Rivers with a positive net revenues based on the 2022 fiscal data. Modi, let's get your perspective on this and the way forward, because with this report, what do you make out of this first off?
In as much as I want workers to earn as much as $500,000 million per month as minimum wage, but the reality on ground shows that even at 30,000, 15 states, as at February this year, are yet to implement 30,000 minimum wage. And, you know, the governors met with the president on Thursday, and they put the cards on the table. They said, if there is an 100% increment in the minimum wage from 30 to 62,000, as is being proposed, which Labour is not even agreeing to, it means that 13 more states will not be able, in fact, will be running deficits every month. In terms of recurrent. Recurrent is where salaries are paid. So, and it means we only have about 10 states, including the likes of Lagos, Rivers, Bayelsa, and a few others, Kaduna, who can actually pay
the new
minimum wage, as it were. And the flip side of it, which I want Labour to realize, is that you can't eat your cake and still have it. Now, the governors might have no other option than to cut or further cut workforce. You should look in Anambra, for example, has 20,500 capacity workforce and a wage bill of 1.8 billion per month, pension 894 million, debt servicing 594 million. That is even one of the smallest. Bayelsa has a workforce of 48,000 and wage bill 5.8 billion, pension 1.9 billion, and a debt service obligation of 3.5 billion. So every month Bayelsa, for example, pays 10 billion naira. That is at 30,000 minimum wage. Because we're only talking of this minimum wage, there is what we call consequential adjustment. As we are adjusting the minimum wage, pensioners, we are adding to salaries of everybody. Pensioners too are also involved. Theirs will also move up. So it means that the whole allocation of a state, both FAAC and even internally generated revenue, might end up being consumed by. So what the governors decided is, which Labour has also kicked again, is that let each state, if Lagos can afford to pay 60 or 70,000, or even Edo has even said they can pay 70,000. It is, you don't expect Zamfara or Ekiti to pay the same wage as Lagos or Rivers.
But that's what the law says.
That is what the law says. But
see, when the governors bring up this argument, it is meaningless.
And of course,
the constitution
but can they pay?
has to change.
But can they pay?
For you to introduce that suggestion that, oh, let governors, let states pay what they can pay. No. No, that's not what the law envisages. The law envisages that there will be a wage floor.
Yes.
And the law envisages that, based on the minimum wage law, no employer of labor shall pay lower than what is agreed.
Yeah.
We are in a situation today that some governors have adopted a laissez-faire attitude to the minimum wage thing, as if it's not a law. The law permits the Minister of Labor and Productivity to implement the law. But you and I know that, as stubborn as Chris Ngige was, he could not intimidate anybody to pay minimum wage. So, is it Nkiru that will now forcefully implement the minimum wage? It is not, that law, to me now, has to be amended.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. Why should we have a situation in which something is signed into law? They prepare the document, they take it before the president signs it into law. It becomes law. But people refuse to, some people make up their minds to not obey the law. And for some of them, it's not their fault. It's because they don't have the resources. At the time, it's just like I gave the example of the Petroleum Equalization Fund. There are many things wrong about the Nigerian, the federal structure that we run. The Petroleum Equalization Fund was designed to ensure that we have this, the same, petrol is sold at the same price across all parts of our country. Well, you and I know that it's not easy to implement that. Somebody, and they are all coming to Lagos to lift petroleum products. You lift PMS from here, you are going all the way to
Sokoto, and you want to sell at 580.
And you want to sell at the same.
That's not possible.
So government was paying the differentials, paying the excess costs to truckers. They are complaining that they are owing them
billion,
because a lot of money. We are owing those truckers.
Yeah.
It's just out of patriotism that they chose not to go on strike. We've been owing them because it's a lot of money. But with the deregulation of that sector, you don't expect people to buy petrol at the same price across the length and breadth of our country. It's not happening anymore. Even Ogun State here, the NNPCL designed a template that ensures that across our country we don't buy petrol at the same price. The price of petrol in Lagos is different to the price in Abuja.
Or even in Ogun. It's even different from.
So what is the way forward in this?
Because they will have put all of. So now, for me, you see, I don't know how this whole labor thing will end. Issuing ultimatum that they must decide. These are not things that you decide quickly. I said it at that time. It's meaningless to say, oh, you are giving ultimatum if they do not. Even after the government told labor that, look, it will take effect from May. You understand? So that if it gets resolved in September, government had already committed itself to a kind of retroactive implementation of the minimum wage. But they still went on strike and laid their hands on the national grid in spite of, of that. It's the height of irresponsibility
shut down the airports.
Shut down the national grid. It should never happen again. And I've said, if people like Nuri, Badu and others allow it to happen, it will mean that they are incompetent. I can say it 1,000,000 times. You allow that to happen, this is a matter for another day, and I hope they don't
allow it to happen
do it again. That they too don't even go there again. Now, you know how many people died because they could not access public electricity in some hospitals? People died. I have a friend who lost 2 persons. So that is not even the issue. What for me, if we start having this conversation, you remember that Labour said no, these governors, nobody will permit them to dictate the minimum wage. It's a tripartite committee. You have to agree at some point. 250,000 naira per month as minimum wage, as desirable as it is,
not sustainable.
It's utopian. It's an utopia. Because I don't see how you want to do it.
Fantasy land. It can only happen in
I don't see how you want to do it. Even this 62, I've mentioned repeatedly so that people can fact check me. Abia State, Labour leaders were begging the governor to implement 30,000 minimum wage. They've not implemented it. Except if he implemented it yesterday and I wasn't aware. It's not even possible for me to be aware of everything. So it's possible that he has implemented it overnight. I'm not aware. But for them to have come out to say, Governor, implement 30,000 minimum wage, that is a shameful reminder of the fact that many states are yet to even implement the old one, and we are talking about a new one that is double that amount. So, for me, I think we have reached that point when that law, I have to take a second look at that law, amend it. In America, nobody is, some states, their minimum wage is above the national average. Yeah. It's not a problem.
Right.
Massachusetts, for example, will pay higher than most states.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that it's the richest American state. That's just what they think they can afford. That's the law in their state. So the way it is now, I don't think that that law, in the form in which it was designed,
right,
I don't think we can continue. This will probably be the last minimum wage that's under that law. Because for me, it becomes a farce. It becomes a joke. If we have a situation in which maybe only about 10 states can pay the minimum wage, others are not paying, and you can't do anything to them, or you do not do anything to them. So why is it a national minimum wage? That means it's not a national minimum wage. It's just a minimum wage for those who can afford to pay. So it's not national in nature. If it's national, it should be binding on all of us.
Well, perhaps there will be a realistic look on that aspect. Let's quickly move on to our next issue of discussion.